你好，我是戴安娜，戴维了。我的中文马马虎虎, so I will continue in English maybe. And today we will discover the latest trends in private label and retail in China and beyond. So let's get started with the impact the pandemic and the global food shortage had on people's purchasing behavior and consumption habits. So what happened is during the lockdown, of course, home delivery exploded, unmanned stores became popular again, and people were trying new ways of consumption. Of course, thinking of changing their mobility systems because of the pollution, thinking of changing their food consumption because of the link that became even more obvious between nutrition and disease. So people were forced also in a situation, so as soon as the lockdown was over, some of them were very happy to go back to normal because it was also giving a sense of comfort, especially people who are very social. They were really missing the interaction, going to the shop and talking, with the vendor. Some other persona actually experienced new ways of shopping, like home delivery, and thought it was very convenient. They were not missing so much this social interaction, so they just continue doing it. For them, maybe not all the time, but they continue doing it regularly for certain type of products. And I would say a third group of people made more radical changes. Maybe they started a home growing product in their garden if they are lucky, or on their balcony, and some also moved to smaller cities. So they left Beijing, they left Shanghai, they went to a bit smaller city, maybe getting a less paid job, but gaining in quality of life. So I would say that the pandemic, so we can group people into three: people who immediately went back like it was before, they couldn't wait; people who kept the new habit, the new way of shopping that they had the chance to experiment and they liked; and people who completely, more radically changed their lifestyle, their nutrition, the place they live in. So let's talk now about the rise of private labels. So I think in a recent article of Forbes, as many as 87% of people, have been buying private labels. So of course, retailer played a huge role in the pandemic. We can think of Carrefour in Shanghai. During the lockdown, the people, the crew of the shop, they were working 19 hours shift, sleeping in the shop. Well, maybe that was not their choice, but getting food delivered to people. They really took their role at heart. And also Carrefour decided to double the wages, to give all the needed protective gear to the teams so that they could successfully and in all safety do their job. So people during the lockdown really they remember that. You remember the brands, the retailer who were supporting you. I can also mention companies, people who had the chance to work in companies who sent a little gift basket, especially at the very beginning of the lockdown when no food could go through. People will always remember. Yeah? So for sure, retailer and private label, really they won people's heart, and their products also suddenly made sense to some consumer maybe used to buying a brand. Suddenly they discovered, wow, okay, these products are not so bad. So it was also an opportunity to taste, to try products you wouldn't buy otherwise. What is certain is some product categories are always successful. I mean, whether you have a pandemic, whether you have a crisis, people will always buy coffee, tea, rice. This doesn't change. I would even say when people are stressed, they buy even more tea, even more coffee, even more chocolate. Well, toilet paper, that was probably a particular case due to the pandemic. But so people, some products, it doesn't move, it doesn't change. And even the sales exploded. Some of our clients, they had difficulties to cope. For instance, they were selling some chips or, some Mexican type of food that usually you would consume out of home. But as people couldn't go out, they started to cook more at home. So they were buying different type of products they would not buy usually. So our clients were struggling to deliver, to manufacture and to deliver the food. So what we can say is that retailers are the new brands. Retailers are the new brands. Let me give you the example of coffee. So we were working with this coffee brand making pods, that you put in a machine. And they were selling, so they were coming from Central Europe, so they were making these coffee pods and they were partnering with a company doing the coffee machine. Then they started selling in new countries that were not their original country, like for instance Germany. And they were very surprised because it was quite successful. People would buy the coffee machine and then they would put their little individual pod inside, but they were not buying the pods from the A brand. They were going to Lidl. So Lidl, you must know, a very famous hard discounter that is present all over the world, and they were buying the pods at Lidl. So the brand was quite upset. We had a meeting with the board and they were saying, okay, people, what matters is only money. So they're buying these Lidl pads because it's cheaper. Or also our brand has, is not local in Germany. It has a weird name that people cannot really pronounce, and also it's a new brand. People never heard of it before. And German are weird. We should never have come to Germany. We don't understand this culture. So I would say the last point is not untrue. If you do not understand a culture, do not go to that country. But decide it beforehand, not when, your product is not working so well. The second point made me laugh. I thought, is it too early to think of it? But think of it also. Every famous brand was not known before it became famous. So it doesn't make any sense to say that a brand was unknown. Yeah, okay. All the brands were unknown before they became famous. But what made them become famous is that the product had something special that consumers say, aha, that's something awesome and I will repurchase it. So the problem was obviously the product. Then looking at the price, it's true, you cannot deny that Lidl pods were a bit more affordable. Not so much more, but a little bit more affordable. So we investigated. We had the coffee tasted by, autochthone, by local people. And what came out is that the product from Lidl was actually better. So when I say better, it means more suitable for this local persona. In terms of tastes, for instance, to go a bit in detail, in Germany, people will prefer a coffee that is less bitter and a bit more sour, which is exactly the taste profile that the Lidl coffee had. So you see, there's always an explanation behind the success of a product that is something else than just price for consumer who can tell the difference, and there are quite some out there. So the second example of a very successful, I would say, retailer that became a brand is Decathlon. So Decathlon, they come from north of France, and they sell sports equipment and also sports clothing. Well, even though I prefer to wear linen, as you can see. But yeah, Decathlon is very successful and they have many stores as well in Shanghai, all over China and the world. So what explains their success is that they are selling their own brands. So they have many in-house brands. So for each sport, they created a brand name. So which means that if you are scuba diving or if you are playing basketball, you know exactly which Decathlon brand is talking to you. You don't always know it's Decathlon, but it doesn't matter. They choose also a name that resonates with the specific hobby that they are catering to. And Decathlon is also inventing many products. I think one of their most successful products is a tent. You know, a little tent that you just unfold like that, you throw it, you know, and the tent is installed. So people camping, they love it because otherwise you spend hours putting it together. So a brand like Decathlon, so it became a brand really, so the very actually a collection of private labels is now also showing the example. So they noticed that especially in sports equipment, it's also valid for me, I have to admit it. I registered many times to the fitness club and often I went once and not twice. So I have to, I have to admit it. And it's the same for sports equipment. So people say, oh wow, I will start playing badminton. Then they purchase the whole equipment. And then after 1 or 2 matches, they say, yeah, okay, maybe not. So what do they do with all these items? They have to sell them online, on Tmall, whatever. It's too complicated, on Taobao, whatever. It's too complicated. So Decathlon created a new retail chain, and during the launch they call it No Tel Said. Actually, it's the Decathlon name spelled the other way around. So I think I pronounce it very bad, but yeah, you take the word Decathlon and you mirror it. Why? Because they showed, it's a bit like a marketing stunt. They want to show that they want to revolutionize the way people consume. So in that new retail chain, you can go and bring back your used Decathlon equipment. So they will sell it, they will buy it back from you, at a lower price, of course, and then they will refurbish it and sell it again in the same stores. And the one that you cannot refurbish, then they will recycle them. So far, they were able to recycle 80% of all the items that people brought back. Yeah, and of course, kid bikes and some equipment are very, very popular. So retailer not only became brands, but they also became opinion leaders. They can really influence the way people consume. So they can be game changers in the market. The last point I wanted to share with you is maybe some recommendation as a private label, as a retailer, because I give the example of Lidl, of Decathlon, but all are not that successful, all are not that successful, and some private label are struggling a little bit more. So here some do's and don'ts, what we observed working with brands and retailers. So first I would say that products need to be simple. As a private label, it's important to keep it simple. Simple means that the packaging has to be clear. The packaging has to be clear with pictures, with transparency, so that you can see what you are buying. Yeah. So whether it's for food or cosmetics, you want to understand what exactly you will put on your skin or you will swallow. Yeah. Then you have another aspect about healthy. I think people, especially some persona, they are more conscious of ingredients. You do not want all kind of weird chemicals, added things. So I think what makes a success of private label is often the formula are much more simple. You look at it, you have a couple of ingredients, you understand what they stand for. And this is especially true in cosmetics, where you are happy to see, oh, it's vitamin C, okay, I get it, I understand what it is. or you understand it's another, it's a coffee shampoo. Oh, okay, I understand, what it's about. Another aspect that is very important is consistency. I have the case of, for instance, Aldi. Aldi is another discounter, and they have a collection of biscuits. Yeah, so they have a collection of a brand name for biscuits and or snacks, and then you have different type of biscuits. But then, when you love one of the reference, you buy the second one from Aldi, and the taste profile has nothing to do. So if you love the first one, mathematically you will find the second one disgusting because it has so nothing to do. And the other way is true. The other way around is true. People who will love the second pack of biscuits, they will hate the first one because then it doesn't have enough taste and so on. So that's a big issue because even for you as a retailer, you see it as a category like biscuits. For the persona, for the consumer, it's not like that. The consumer sees an ensemble of food that they would buy and that they like. So when you create, and that's a bit a brand, when people love a brand, it's because they like everything about the brand, from the brand image, the ambassador representing the brand, to the actual taste of the product, and that they fit with each other, and that if you liked maybe this douche gel from this brand, you might also like their shampoo, yeah? So that is often misunderstood, yeah? So I think that's important to have this consistency. If you feel that you have two profiles of biscuit eaters, then create two brands of biscuits, it's okay. So I think that's very important. Another aspect that is key is to really refine the portfolio and the assortment locally. Yeah, so we did a lot of profiling of shopper, and what is certain is you can find a bit the similar profile of shopper everywhere, but not in the same proportion. Yeah, so what will have an influence is of course the country, the city even. If you go to Chengdu, it's not the same people than in Shanghai or in Beijing. It's not the same people, and even if you are in Shanghai, people who will go in the city center might be different from people going shopping by car, might be different from people, shopping in Hangzhou or shopping in Suzhou, or so you really need to understand the profile of your shopper and give the shop manager the room to change the assortment and adapt it locally. I can give you an example. Nothing to do with with fast-moving goods, but just to tell you, even Hermès in Shanghai is adapting their products locally. We had the chance to talk with the store manager, and they explained that, for instance, especially for Shanghai, they choose colors that represent the brand for Shanghai, and it's orange and blue. And of course, over the different stores of the shop, you have specific products that have been selected in the catalog to appeal to people in Shanghai. So I mean, if Hermès is doing it, I would guess that retailer and private label in food and fast-moving consumer goods, they should definitively look into that. So my advice to this brand is keep it simple, make sure to be relevant, and focus less on promotion. Great products, they do not need promotion. We had an example where we created a new product for a private label, and we made a test in the store, and people never heard of the product. They were not necessarily buying new product in that category because they had their habits. But if you have the right product in the packaging that is consistent with the content, which means that the packaging will attract a certain type of people by the color code, by the design, and these people will love what is inside the product, then you guarantee the repurchase, and you do not need to spend so much money on promotion. So save the money on promotion, put it in the product, and I think this is probably the best advice to make great private label. So thank you so much for having me. I hope that you enjoyed the local example and the more exotic ones. And I wish you a great continuation of the convention. Thank you very much. Xie xie. Bye bye.